Hey friends, I'm Jer Stays. One of the things that I'm most excited about as far as Detroit, our region, our potential, and turning that into reality is the large number of greenway and streetscape projects, not just on the drawing board, but underway. Touching neighborhoods across the city proper and suburbs, there is a new energy focused on building our local assets. On today's Daily Detroit for Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, our at least yearly checkup with Todd Scott of the Detroit Greenways Coalition. From Belle Isle and the Iron Belle Trail to the Joe Louis Greenway with shovels in the ground to Morningside work this year to Ferndale and so much more, we've got a lot to talk about. Let's get started after a couple of housekeeping things. First, Gary, Sarah, Maggie, and Deb, thank you for your support at buymeacoffee.com/dailydetroit. I'm glad to open up this opportunity to support us when you can afford it. $5, a few bucks, whatever you can do goes a long way. Second, don't forget, we're giving away season tickets. That's right, season tickets to Detroit City FC matches this year to a lucky listener. You can enter at dailydetroit.com/windcfc. That's dailydetroit.com/windcfc. I cannot wait to see you out there at Keyworth. All right, let's just jump into it. Joining me virtually, Todd Scott, the Detroit Greenways Coalition. Welcome back to Daily Detroit. It is always good to talk to you, sir.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, of course. I like to check in with you at least once a year. I know how much listeners are excited about all the walkable, bikeable ways to explore our city and region, and I know that you're kind of at the nexus of so much that's going on. Let's talk Joe Louis Greenways. There's been some videos that have surfaced. Things are starting to actually really visibly move in a way that you simply cannot ignore it. So can you kind of highlight where things are at with that project?
Sure. I think that, when you talk about moving, they're actually moving earth and that, and it's exciting. So the first half-mile segment between Tireman and Joy Road over on the west side is currently under construction, and they're hoping to have that open perhaps the end of this year, if not, maybe early next year. And then they're also looking at the next segment that will continue north, eventually wrap around the city and connect through Hamtramck and Highland Park and back down to the Quinter Cut. So, yeah, it's starting to happen. It's super exciting. And, this is, we've been talking about this for over a decade now, and things are finally getting in gear.
Some of the impacts of this, I think, are going to be pretty huge, not just for people that, might do the whole Greenway cycle, but it's going to touch a lot of neighborhoods, right?
It really will, yeah. And I think, one thing that's really been beneficial to this project is, initially the thought was this was just going to be a narrow paved path for walking and biking. And the city has expanded it to become so much more that they've been able to wrap in the local community's concerns with what they want in their neighborhood, which is, less blight, improving housing stock, affordable housing, creating parks within their neighborhood, and the Joe Louis has become all of that. So it's going to be super exciting. It's going to be a little bit different from the DeQuinter Cut in terms of, it's not going to be below ground. You're not going to be physically separated from the neighborhoods through which you're passing. You're going to be able to see and connect to all these different amenities and communities along the way. So it's going to be really, really an amazing facility.
To be clear, the DeQuinter Cut, both of them actually, they use in part former rail lines, right? Not all of it, but parts of it for this big Joe Louis Greenway. But it isn't as cut into the earth as DeQuinter Cut was, right?
It used to be in the 1920s was on DeQuinter Street, and it had so many trains on it, and it blocked all the traffic coming out of Detroit that the city forced the railroad to cut the DeQuinter railroad lines and put them below ground so that they could have vehicles cross over the railroad when it was so busy. But that's not the case over on the west side for the railroad portions of the Joe Louis Greenway. Most of that is at grade. It does cross over some, the expressways like 96 and the Lodge, but it's at the same level as the residential streets.
Another project people are starting to get fired up about are the streetscapes. I believe there are 3 happening around the city. These streetscape kind of reimaginations. They're of different scales. One I'll mention, only because I know that part of town a little bit better than others, is over on East Warren. It's going to be pretty large. I think it's kind of centered like Elger Theater-ish south, if I remember. The thing is about that's exciting is that if you turn into some of those neighborhoods, the housing stock does not reflect the commercial corridor. Like the commercial corridor looks way more dog-eared than some of the housing, especially from that area of like 3 Mile kind of north up onto East Warren. There's so much good housing stock in there, but that commercial corridor just for years hasn't reflected the quality of the neighborhood.
Yeah, and what we've seen in previous streetscapes like Livernois and even the more recent ones like on West McNichols is that when the city makes improvements to the sidewalks and the lighting and adding bike lanes, it attracts businesses. I mean, Livernois has just, despite the COVID pandemic, has just added so many more businesses, and it's really become a success story. It's great that we don't have to go to other cities and bring in examples to prove these things work. We can now point to local examples, which are much more relatable to Detroiters. So I expect, with this high level of investment on East Warren, we're going to see more businesses, hopefully more locally and Black-owned businesses come to the strip and be successful.
Well, one thing that was interesting on Livernois that we saw is that timing, although, the project did create some disruptions, the timing of it getting completed where you have that open patio, I know there were some businesses that were really able to take advantage of that. You started to see like, wow, there could really be some life along Livernois in a very outdoor way. There was always life there, but in a way that you just drive down the street and you're like, wow, this is a transformation.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think there were some folks commenting that why would we ever need sidewalks that wide, and then the pandemic hit and it's like, oh boy, that's clairvoyant.
There is more than just East Warren, of course, but I'm guessing you know a little bit more about those than I do.
One other one that we're really looking forward to is Rosa Parks, north of West Grand Boulevard. This was supposed to be under construction last year, but some concerns from the community came up at the city council table, and it held up the project. So the city held another community meeting and talked through the designs again, took some votes, and the community did vote for the streetscape, including adding the bike lanes in. And I think one thing that's also kind of interesting too is it's going to be removing some pavement. I mean, there were 6 lanes of traffic going northbound on Rosa Parks. That's actually the same number of lanes that's on the Lodge Freeway, just to the east of that area, which is ridiculous.
I'll take that up Rosa Parks to hit the congregation and then head home. And that road is unimaginably wide for what it needs to be.
Right, especially in a city that's suffering from flooding from stormwater. Anytime you can remove pavement, it's a benefit. And this project will remove a good amount of that pavement. And they're also going to make it so the street's two-way, so that if you're heading southbound, you can get right to the boulevard. You don't have to cut down a residential street, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So they're really, really cleaning things up in there, and they're adding in the bike lanes. So that's really beneficial. The other big streetscape project is going to be on 15th Street, and it's really going to be kind of unique because it's really within the Ford train station footprint. So it's going to take 15th Street, and half of it's going to become car free, just for walking and biking, and the other portion will have a two-way bike lane on it. But what it's going to do is it's going to connect up the future Southwest Greenway at Bagley up to the train station. So it's a short one, but I think it's going to be kind of unique and pretty cool that you'll be able to look out over the railroad, from while you're walking or biking.
Well, and that project seems like it would have a very high visibility, not just regionally, but kind of nationally, because everybody who interacts with that division of Ford and what they're doing over there will see that project and will kind of be a signifier of what's possible in Detroit.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, there's so much effort going on now of making this part of Detroit, mobility innovation area. So, it's going to be more than just walking and biking. You'll see out there. So, of course, with the Southwest Greenway, being under construction this year, that'll connect Roosevelt Park and the train station in Corktown directly to the Riverwalk and the new Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Centennial Park.
Well, speaking of the Riverwalk, now a little bit farther east, of course, there's the work that's happening with the Iron Belle Trail, that connection of the bridge. Let's walk through that because, I mean, if you love Belle Isle, these couple of like projects, I mean, I believe they're tied. I believe we were talking before we got on the air. They're kind of tied together, but to a lot of people, these kind of two areas, I think could be huge difference makers as far as like biking and just like understanding like the access to the river that's possible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've been talking about the Uniroyal site for a long time, and that's the brownfield property that is directly west of the MacArthur Bridge over to Belle Isle. And the Riverwalk's been really, or the Riverfront Conservancy's been very busy on working on that section, and they hope to open up this year, perhaps the end of this year, and that'll just be a major connection. I mean, Gabriel Richard Park is there, and it kind of feels a little bit orphaned from the rest of the Riverwalk. But with this section being done, it'll all connect together. And with the Iron Belle Trail, on the island, the DNR has been working on a new off-road trail that runs between the road and the river, and they're completing more sections of that every year, and they'll have another section under construction this year.
I mean, the idea to just be able to bike from end to end would be amazing. I think about the number of times I've biked from the east side to downtown Detroit for work, and how amazing would it have been to be able to get to the Belle Isle Bridge, kind of, or MacArthur Bridge, appropriately named, and then kind of cut to a Riverwalk trail that kind of goes all the way the rest of the way down. I mean, that would just be, I mean, Jefferson's great and all, but like having a walk like that or having trails and spaces like that would just be amazing.
Yeah, it really would be. I mean, especially for folks who don't want to, who still don't feel comfortable being on the protected bike lanes on the major roads, where it's noisy and that, it's, and being along the river is beautiful. And I mean, so it's a nice, we need both. You need these facilities for people who need to get places rather quickly. And then we need facilities for people who maybe aren't in such a hurry and, want to look around and maybe perhaps stop along the way. So.
Well, I think what these projects also do is help give people reasons to stay, because I think that's part of it is so long we've designed the city, and I'm just saying this as a city resident, we've designed the city of like in and out, right? Like you come to work, you leave. And if there's different ways to get more people to stay and benefit the residents that are already here, then I feel like that's a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of the argument, right? There's the discussion about removing I-375 and, that really serves as a way of getting people from the suburbs to downtown. And I mean, they are they will replace it with a major surface street, but ultimately, you'd rather have those people live closer to work. Especially, not just for the benefit of the city, but also in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. I mean, we need to figure out ways so that people don't have to travel so far to get to places, and maybe they don't use their car, maybe they walk, bike, or use public transit instead, and that's definitely better for the planet.
If we want to kind of stop the population flattening that's happened the last 50 years in this region and the decline, not just in Detroit, but a number of cities, I mean, I feel like we got to do something different. We've been doing the same, and this Greenway and this idea of more inviting spaces, I think is a way to help do that. One of the things that strikes me is I will talk with friends and they will travel to other cities and they will see these sorts of things and be like, oh, this is great on vacation. And then it's like, well, but you could have that here. You know that, right? You could have those kind of great amenities right here. You don't have to go on vacation for them if you advocate for them.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. I mean, when people travel to Europe and they go to these great cities that are walkable and bikeable and have transit, or even if you think about places when people go to Disney World and you walk down Main Street and it's so relaxing because you don't have to deal with a bunch of cars coming at you, and it's quieter and, so yeah, we need to build more of that stuff here in the city, and it will definitely attract more people, but it'll also be much better for the folks who already live here.
So let's finish up that conversation around the Detroit River before we go to our final thing I really want to talk about. What is the work happening on Belle Isle? I have noticed, especially last year driving around, there are a lot more bike paths and bike areas, stuff that was under construction. I wasn't sure what was done and wasn't yet, so I didn't really hop on them, but I saw that they existed. What's happening this year?
Well, so the vision is to build this trail between the road and the river. I mean, there currently are bike lanes on the outer ring road of the island. But for some people, they don't feel comfortable biking on them. And of course, there's no sidewalk around the island, unbelievably. So this would give a place for people who want to ride slower or walk or run and be separated from the car traffic. And, the first segment from the boat club to the beach was built last year, and then it extended to the trailhead, which is over by the lighthouse. And they're going to continue constructing this trail in a clockwise direction around the island, so it's a complete loop.
That will be a lot of fun to do. So that's what I was seeing, is that first section by the boathouse and kind of the beach. I assume that's what I was seeing.
Yep, I bet you that's what it was.
Let's swing our focus a little bit outside of the city, about a mile outside of the city borders, to Ferndale. We did an episode on Daily Detroit talking about this as it was coming together, but I really wanted to look at it from the Greenways walkability perspective, from somebody who's steeped in it like you are. This project at 9 Mile and Woodward is something that takes this rethink of how we move people and moves it, and does it in the suburbs in a big way. And it created some controversy, but the city of Ferndale is staying the course and making sure this thing happens. So can you describe for folks kind of what's happening up there around 9 and Woodward?
For a long time now. I know I've personally been involved in reimagining Woodward for 25 years to make it better for biking and walking. And the city of Ferndale has always been at the forefront of that discussion as well. And we've gone through many design workshops and come up with design documents for complete streets on all of Woodward. And, it's been really tough getting MDOT to actually do it. But Ferndale has really stuck with it. And given that MDOT was repaving the Woodward corridor through their city and through Pleasant Ridge, they thought this was a great time to really push hard on MDOT to get them to do what's called a road diet, where they'll take the fourth lane on each side of the road and convert it to a two-way bike path. Now, the initial design is really probably more temporary. Long term, they'll do more changes with more concrete and more curbs. But for now, since it's just a repave project, they're just going to get it on the ground and installed. And it's going to be two-way bike lanes on both sides of the street. I mean, Woodward is such a wide road that it's unrealistic to expect people to only go in one direction on bikes on that corridor. So it's really going to make it much easier for people to get to these businesses and locations along Woodward in a safe way. And it's also going to shorten the crosswalks for people who are trying to walk across Woodward, which is really, rather dangerous at this point. It's such a wide road, and, removing, 22 feet of road lanes is going to improve things. So I know there's been some controversy, but there always is, and there's loud voices, and then there's everybody else. And it's been studied. They did simulations to figure out how much delay they would add to the road for motorists, and it's really just during peak there will be a slight increase in delay, but for the most part there will not be any changes to the level of service for motorists.
Well, I'll also highlight the safety part. Now, I don't have the data around this, but I have heard multiple times, and frankly, I've walked that intersection enough times to know that it's so wide that it's even hard to make it across one side of that road. And there are people turning, stuff like that. Especially, people forget Ferndale is a entertainment district in a lot of ways. There's a lot of bars and restaurants, and I've heard so many stories, and I've known of people who have gotten clipped or almost hit because of that giant wide Woodward corridor. And if you make that 22 feet shorter, I think you could really help reduce the chances that a pedestrian is going to get hit. And I think the other side of it too is it's a way for the region to kind of see what happens when, what if I slow down a little bit and go the speed limit through there? Because that's the other thing, is that I've noticed over the years that very few people actually go the speed limit through that corridor. It's something where you can slow down and say, hey, what's in Ferndale? What's here? And yes, I mean, and I'm biased because I have my beliefs on this, but that extra 30 seconds of commute time, I think it could be a little bit pleasurable, even if you're in a car.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's even 30 seconds, maybe less than that. And listen, if you want to go fast through that area, you have I-75, which just added another lane to it. So there's other options. I would say too, one of the big things we're seeing now with this new administration in DC, Washington, DC, and the new transportation secretary is a larger focus on safety. And I think previously, it was just words. Yeah, we're committed to safety, but I think now there actually is more of a commitment to safety, and it's going to be reflected in the transportation funding, and it's going to force MDOT to make some significant changes to their roads to make them safer, but especially for walking and bicycling, which during the pandemic have seen tremendous increases in crashes, significant injuries, and fatalities. And MDOT really has not done much in that regard. So they're going to be forced to spend a lot more of their federal safety dollars on improving walking and biking. So I expect we'll see more road diets like this moving forward. And hopefully, maybe we can see this Ferndale effort connect south of 8 Mile into Detroit and connect all the way down to the Riverwalk.
I mean, that would be an amazing thing and a showcase that I think people would travel to come see and to come use.
Absolutely.
The other thing to remember too is that the amount of traffic, and I remember seeing something on Woodward that the amount of traffic going through that intersection is a lot less than it used to be. And there's a lot of other roads, not just there, but in the city of Detroit and across the region that are taking less traffic than they used to be. And it also comes to the idea of maybe right sizing our infrastructure. And I think it kind of all ties together, right? It ties into that flooding conversation. Like it's this big kind of virtuous circle, which means this is more than about bikers and bike lanes. It's about being better stewards of the land that we're on.
That's exactly it, Jared. Our roads are so overbuilt, and there's really never been much of a policy for local road agencies to remove some of that pavement. And it does reduce flooding. It reduces maintenance costs.
Mm-hmm.
It gives an opportunity to provide more greenery and more trees. I mean, it's beneficial from so many different aspects, but we just really have not pursued that. But I think with the climate change being more at the forefront now, I think we're going to see more and more of those actions taking place.
Well, and even if you're not somebody who's all about climate change, which I mean, I believe it's a thing and I know it's a real thing. If you want to look at it from a pure dollars and cents point of view, listeners often get at me and they say, why don't we do more with our roads? What about fixing our roads? Well, if we as a region haven't really grown as a population since the 1970s, think about how many more roads we've built since the 1970s for about the same amount of people. We're maintaining miles and miles and lanes of road that are way more than we need, and that costs money every cycle, and that takes away from being able to fix the road properly. If I remember correctly, they price out how they fix roads, by the lane mile and how many lanes there are. Well, if you have a 3-lane road and you take out one, you've cut down the maintenance costs on that road.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we've seen with sprawl, we've seen so many more miles of road lanes installed, and we're seeing everyone is driving significantly more miles as things become more spread out. Yeah, it just becomes so expensive, and we see that motorists are unwilling to pay for that. I mean, right now the maintenance for our roads is so heavily subsidized by just the regular taxpayers, that motorists aren't paying near what the true cost is to build and maintain these roads at the state and federal level.
And that's always such a hard conversation to have because there is, to an average listener, I get it. It looks like a really big total number that we're spending on roads, and oh my gosh, it costs so much. But time after time, whether when I covered the beginning of the 375 kind of Boulevard project, I did a piece for PBS One Detroit, or did a number of things over the years, it's just the facts that we don't spend enough for the amount of roads we have, even though it feels like we're spending lots of money. There is no huge amount of money that's being squirreled away somewhere in some crooked way. It's that the math is wrong. And the math's been wrong for decades. And until we get that right, we're never going to actually fix the pothole problem,
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, a study just came out today looking at the average gas tax in industrial countries, and we're sitting at a very low 56 cents per gallon, whereas the average is $2.24 a gallon.
Wow.
And even Canada, which it is 74 cents a gallon. So, we have not raised the gas tax to be in line with inflation, and I know we're subsidizing with general tax dollars, but yeah, the real cost of roads is much higher than what motorists are willing to pay, and yet they still want more. So yeah, it's out of balance.
Well, if you don't want to pay more in taxes, why don't you get behind the idea of taking some of those unused roads out, right?
That's right, and support public transit, and biking and walking. The maintenance costs for roads ridden on by bikes is negligible.
We're recording this the morning after a council vote in Auburn Hills where they decided to begin the process of opting out of SMART, the regional bus system. And I mean, to me, that's just kind of amazing in the idea that they would want to do this, considering that they have Oakland University there. They have like a downtown area that's starting to grow. And then to pull the plug on transit accessible to everyone, it's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, especially in light of, we're trying to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and, opting out of transit is like the opposite of what you'd want to do. Very frustrating.
Todd Scott, if people want to know more, they want to donate, they want to help the works that you're doing, what can they do?
Well, definitely visit our website, which is detroitgreenways.org. We have just a ton of information on there. We also have a monthly newsletter. You can subscribe to our newsletter from our website. And we just try to keep everybody updated on all that's happening. And frankly, it's a bit overwhelming at times. There's just so much going on. This year is going to be a major year for construction, not just the Riverwalk and Joe Louis Greenway and the streetscapes, but, all that's happening. It's just going to be amazing. And looking forward to, talking a year from now and celebrating all that was done.
Thanks so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit. I'm Jer Stays. Until next time, take care of each other and don't forget to enjoy the Paris of the Midwest.